now. Before we begin the session, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we stand and pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. As we gather here today, it is important that we take a moment to reflect on the history and ongoing legacy of colonization and its impact on the indigenous people. The land we stand on has a rich history that goes back thousands of years, and it is important that we recognize and honor the contributions of the indigenous people who have called this land their home. The land that Sheridan College occupies is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Metis, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. But as we meet on this virtual platform, I would urge each one of you to acknowledge and reflect on whose land it is that you are occupying. In doing so, we can also begin to inculcate and acknowledge the indigenous ways of knowing and being. These ways are grounded in a deep respect for the land and all living things, and are based on a holistic understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. By learning from and incorporating these ways of knowing and being into our lives, we can begin to build a more sustainable, just, and equitable world for all. As we move forward, let us do so with humility and willingness to learn and grow. Let us honor the land and its original caretakers and work towards fulfilling our collective responsibility towards those who have gone before us, those who are here, and those who are yet to come. And with that, I would like to welcome all of you who are attending a session with Edge for the first time. A little about Edge. We are the social entrepreneurship hub of Sheridan College, and we are a vibrant community of people from all backgrounds of life and who believe entrepreneurship can make a lasting change in society. We support changemakers as they explore entrepreneurial approaches to creating a more equitable and sustainable world. Edge helps founders grow ideas and ventures that support a triple bottom line approach of people, planet, and profit, offering mentorship, learning programs, an inclusive community, co-working space, and funding. Edge connects Sheridan students to opportunities to learn and work with startups and collaborate with community partners to support impact entrepreneurs in the region. Slight technical error. For some reason, there it goes. I'm also excited to introduce a new co-working space. If you've been looking for affordable and centrally located co-working space in the heart of Mississauga, we now have co-working memberships starting as low as $100 a month, which includes hot desk access to the kitchenette with all-day coffee and tea, meeting room time, discounts, business mailing address, and a lot more. We also have day passes available if you want to give it a try. And all of our plans are on a month-to-month basis, which is flexible for you and your teams. I will be sharing the link in the chat in a little while for our co-working and our student memberships. And Sheridan students also get access to a free student membership at Edge to access learning modules in entrepreneurship and change making, access to staff advisors, and a peer community as well. We would also like to make a special announcement on behalf of our colleagues at Sheridan College who are working with colleges and institutes Canada to promote the 50-30 Challenge. The 50-30 Challenge is an initiative between the Government of Canada, Canadian businesses, and diversity organizations. The goal of the program is to challenge Canadian organizations to increase the representation and inclusion of diverse groups within their workspaces, while highlighting the benefits of giving all Canadians a seat at the table. This includes you, founders, startups, and small businesses. The 50-30 Challenge asks organizations to achieve two goals. One, gender parity. 50% of women and non-binary people on Canadian boards or in senior management. And the second goal being significant representation on Canadian boards and or senior management of members of other equity deserving groups. On behalf of the 50-30 team, we are helping to encourage organizations and individuals to make the pledge. It takes less than 5 minutes to sign. Then you can start to explore resources, including this toolkit, which is a comprehensive collection of equity, diversity, and inclusion resources to help your work towards gender parity and significant representation of equity deserving groups in leadership and on boards. The link to this will also be shared in the chat. And now I would like to introduce our wonderful facilitators for today's session. We have Lisa Kember, who helps ambitious impact entrepreneurs grow a stable and financially sustainable venture. As a passionate champion for entrepreneurial community, Lisa is a business growth with a coaching and advisory practice, runs training courses to help entrepreneurs optimize their business, and facilitates peer advisory programs for established founders and CEOs. She has been an entrepreneur throughout her career, running marketing, public relations, personal development, property management, and real estate investment companies. She built a company that doubled in size each year for several years running. She grew another company to over 120,000 customers in 5 years through strategic partnerships that generated close to 36 million in annual business. And since she began coaching in 2017, Lisa has helped over 18 companies successfully grow up to 400% annually, resulting in acquisition of 2 of these ventures. Apart from her...
No, everyone is in charge of their own thing.
Hold on.
Apart from, sorry about that, apart from her practical experience, Lisa holds a BA in Honors English from the University of Waterloo, a marketing practicum from Ryerson University, and a research development diploma from Sheridan College. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I would also love to introduce our second facilitator for today, Mark Rodford. Ever since Mark was 8, he has been working in a community, and through this experience, understood that the rising tide of ventures with vision need indeed raise all boats. His goal has always been to make contributions that would add to the fabric of the community that he lives in. A builder and creative change maker in his community, Mark brings a lifetime of business, operational, and board experience to Edge. In his role as a social venture advisor, his humor and capacity for connecting with people in a meaningful way, coupled with an insightful worldview, has direct impact on the growth of social enterprises he coaches. Mark consults on strategic planning, business development, and branding with community-oriented businesses and organizations. Welcome, Mark. And with that, I shall open the floor to both of you.
Well, thanks so much, Sanjana. We're glad to be here. Mark, I know you're glad to be here too. Mark's just come from a massage, so he's feeling very relaxed.
I'm totally chill. It's amazing. Makes all the difference in the world.
So we're gonna jump in. Am I sharing the slides, Sanjana, or are you?
You can share it if you want to.
Oh, okay. Hold on 1 second then. Sorry, I was ill prepared for that. There we go. Sorry, 1 second. Technical difficulties. Mark, entertain the crowd, please.
A little song and dance, perhaps?
Yes, please. That would be great. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Maybe close. There. All right. So we're going to talk today about planning for, I got it, do I? Okay, good. We're going to talk today about planning for growth. Both Mark and I have been working as part of the coaching team within the RISE program for the last, I don't know, a couple of years. And the RISE program at Edge, I don't know if you're all familiar with it, but it has been a source of helping entrepreneurs who've maybe gotten to a certain point, as in they've started to sell their product or service. They've gotten to some early stage revenue to help them grow and scale. And so both Mark and I are pretty passionate about accelerated growth. And we're going to talk a little bit about the process that we have been using with clients in that program, with members in that program who are looking to grow and create some financial stability within the organization. It's an area of passion for me, and I know it is for Mark as well. So we're going to talk about some strategies for getting your venture there today. But we would ask that you, as much as possible, make this interactive. So feel free to unmute yourself and just ask a question. Both Mark and I are very comfortable with that. And if you're uncomfortable to do that, then feel free to just type in the chat and we'll try and monitor that as well. Sanjan, if we don't answer a question, please feel free to jump in and ask it for us, okay? So we're gonna sort of weave some stories in here. It'll be a little bit casual, so hopefully you'll join in with us. So why are we here? I would like to know why you're here tonight. Why did you choose to attend this session? Please type it in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me, why are you here? Everybody probably has a vision of some sort for their venture. I want to know what brought you to this session? Why accelerated growth through strategic knowledge? Why planning for growth? Anybody? Going once?
Everybody?
Going twice? There it is. Make an environmental and social impact. Awesome. Anybody else? Mark, why are you here?
That's a good question. Well, I'm in here because it's warm outside. It seems to be snowing everywhere else, but I'm always here because I love the intersection of where community and business meet. And I like the effect that that can have when we kind of all end up pulling on the same rope and make the change, you know, find a business way to make the change we want to see in the world. I think it needs to be a bottom-up approach if we're going to do things. We've seen how top-down approaches affect all of us in our everyday lives, and bottom-up always seems to work better for me.
Awesome. So yeah, all of us have a vision. We have an impact we want to make in the world. And opportunities to come together like this are ways to learn and grow from one another. And that includes Mark and I as well. Let's be honest, building a new venture, building a business and an organization, it's not easy. Certainly it's fraught with challenges. And when you think about the impact that you want to make, that means you know, we want to make that impact in our communities, but we want to make it in a way that has some long-lasting impact. Most of us have a vision that extends well beyond our own life within that organization. In fact, many people build organizations with a planned exit in mind. And so, so when you think about your own venture, the one that you're working on right now, and the impact that you want to make, you know, you think about, I've lost my train of thought. Mark, fill me in here.
Actually, I was busy reading some of the reasons why what kind of impact you want to have with your business, but you know, impacts in the chat are that's what I was just reading through. Adding sustainability, how to budget, preparing for success, as opposed to just letting it happen, grow and scale using technology, linking strategy to scaling, which is always key. I think it'd be a good foundation to get my business off the ground, and wants to start an ed tech startup that can scale,
like
right? And scale is always, you know, you hear a lot about the scale, and it's great, but there's, you know, scale is this cautionary tale. You got to be. I'm sure Lisa's going to get into this too, but you got to be careful with your approach, because, you know, there's two types of growth. There's growth bigger and growth better, and both are very important. If you have one without the other, sometimes you can get a little bit of trouble. And we spend a lot of time having those. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. The bottom line is, though, if you want to make an impact, then there's a certain amount of urgency around that, right? We want to get in, we want to get going, and we want to solve the problem that we're looking to address with our venture, whether that's a business venture, a social purpose organization, or a pure social enterprise. There's some urgency around what it is we're trying to achieve through our venture. It always seems to me that the problems of the world seem to be growing bigger and bigger, or maybe I'm just spending too much time on social media, but it does seem like there's a certain amount of unrest and difficulty in the world. And the more that we can come together as entrepreneurs and change makers to try to address some of those problems, the better. So I have a habit of asking people questions, people running businesses questions. And so in preparation for a session I was doing with Ed there a few weeks ago, I asked entrepreneurs what they wish they knew when they started. And this is going to point to some of the things that Mark just said. Steady growth can be better than fast growth is one of the things they said. Understand the money. So if you need to, take a course, but don't just depend on your financial people. The third thing there is financial stability ensures greater impact, meaning the more stable your organization, the greater the impact you can have with your venture. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I hit the wrong key. My apology. I'm a bit of a disaster tonight.
You're doing great.
All right, Sanjay, I'm
awesome.
just falling apart here. So where was I? Financial stability ensures greater impact. So the more stable your organization in its steady growth, the more impact you can have with it if your goal is to have some sort of community impact. You need to focus on sales. So the fastest or best path to cash is to the money is to focus on sales. Business planning means a better business. And then know your costs, know all your costs, not just your markup on products. And then finally, like, treat the CRA well. Don't get behind, because you just married them when you started your venture. So I thought that was kind of amusing, some of those, but some reality there too. So the ones that stand out for me are, oops, I'm having trouble moving forward. That's what happened before. Here we go. I think there. The ones that stand out for me are these three, and these are the three we're going to focus on tonight. That financial stability, the business planning, and the path to growth is through sales. The path to money is through sales. So when it comes to that first item there, the financial stability ensures greater impact, I thought this quote made a lot of sense. Without a solid foundation, you'll have trouble creating anything of value. The truth is that in business, the foundation really matters. How you build, how you grow, how you plan, how you price products, all of that is part of the foundation. Mark, you can jump in. Sorry, I'm pausing so you can, because you know me, I'll talk.
That's okay. I like it. You have a great voice. It's fantastic.
So it's almost like the same reason that they always tell you on an airplane to put your own oxygen mask on before you help someone else. You have to, in order to be able to help someone, be able to be stable yourself. And that is true, certainly, in building an organization. You want to make an impact in the community, you've got to make sure the business, the organization that you're building is stable, sustainable, steady, that it's growing, that it has something viable to offer, and then you can have a greater impact over time. So how do you do that is really the question. And so that really comes down to a business plan. Now, if you thought you were joining a session tonight and it was going to get all technical about how to do market research and build a solid business plan, you're going to find Mark and I are a little different in our approach to this. We're looking to help you build a business plan that is more of an action plan. How do you move forward? How do you accelerate forward and take the steps you need to grow, to evolve, and to strengthen your organization over time? And so what we are going to walk you through is a process that we use that is similar to what's used within RISE, within the RISE program at Edge, which really looks at what is your overall goal, your purpose, your vision, your mission, the impact that you want to make. And then we look at the goals on the short term and on the long term. And then we look at your revenue growth strategy. We create an action plan against those goals, laid out across a quarter or a year, a series of quarters over the year, and then how you're going to measure progress. So pretty simple, straightforward steps. We're going to talk those through tonight. So it really starts with setting up your overall strategic plan. So what is the strengths that you're coming at it with? Where do you have gaps? And within the RISE program, we do what's called a gap assessment in order to identify where you need to strengthen the organization. And so it's very much like a SWOT, which you're seeing right here, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But within the RISE program at Edge, we've sort of rephrased it, renamed it to call it a gap assessment, which is really looking at how do you need to build that foundation stronger? And then how can we accelerate forward from that? And it's interesting, how many ventures have we had through RISE now? I think something like 20 or 25, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And when they come through and we run that gap assessment with them, most of the time they're identifying as a top priority their sales or their revenue generation side of things, whether that's marketing or pure selling. Sales always comes up to the top in the top three, simply because revenue, money, is the lifeblood of any organization, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit. And so we start by looking at where is it that you have both strengths and where you have those gaps. And then we help you set some goals. So, and we set those on a you know, the big goal, the sort of 3 to 5, and then the 1-year goal to sort of have you narrow that down. And then we set goals quarter by quarter. So we've had a few ventures come through where this is sort of a, you know, there's a lot of training that people go through in the entrepreneurship space, which is important and valuable. But when it actually comes to going and building an organization, sometimes you just need to get more quickly to the bottom line. What is it that we actually need to do now that we've done all that background research? So Mark, do you want to talk maybe about one of the ventures through the program?
Yeah. Sorry, say it to me again.
Do you want to talk about one of the ventures coming through the program?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
To lead into that, the important part of this process is to get it out of your head, to get it written down, to chronicle it, make notes. Because if it's just thinking about it all the time, there's some beautiful things that are in behind that need to come forward, and it always looks different after you've written it down. To make lists, sometimes when you make a list, it's like, oh, that's the best idea. Sometimes when you make a list, you realize actually what I was thinking about is not quite right. But we've had some, to answer Lisa's question, we've had some programs. We have one venture right now, which is an app for your phone. They are helping marginalized groups find work, and they've gone we'll actually be able to carry this example through, but they've gone on a great growth. In 2021, they did about $1.2 million. Last year, they did just under 10, and this year they're getting to be like $30 million. And when we took them through this exercise, we very carefully listed everything out overtly so they could keep track of what they needed to be doing next. And that, and we're talking about that speed of growth thing. They're in that place now too, where growth bigger, growth better, and they have to strategically pick a position because they have to satisfy both of those things. If you just grow bigger and have no systems in place, no structure, no foundations, then things can fall apart. If you spend all your time on foundations and structures and planning and you don't make any money growth that way, then you have a very, very good company that's not a company anymore. So there's always that balance going on between the two of them, and I think we'll be able to kind of key in on this example throughout the presentation as something that's like happening right now, has some edge connectivity, but really is a good opportunity for learning for everybody.
I don't know though, Mark, when I started my first business, if I heard a story like that, it just was like too high. So talk about some of the smaller examples, maybe one or two.
The example, yes, and they're time dependent as well. Like it's not, that's a really big example, but I think the point of it is still germane. Like we have smaller ones too. Somebody who's working to develop an application for people who work in manufacturing, so that the people who are working on the floor can contribute to the productivity and advancement of the whole company. Now, and that's a company that hasn't become profitable. They're certainly making, they're certainly doing revenue, but they are changing the way that employees can make a contribution to a process and get rewarded for it. So it kind of turns into a bit of a Facebook for manufacturing employees. It's super cool. And that's iterative. That's the nice thing about that process is they're right in the manufacturing plant, and the employees and the managers and them are working kind of collaboratively to have this iterative product that comes back and forth to the company that makes them more and more and more relevant as time goes on. So they're growing in their development process and in the revenue simultaneously, which is always fantastic to see.
Good examples. I like them. So after we've sort of set the big vision, the big goal, then we go into, okay, what are the action steps we need to take based on the gap assessment that was done, the big goals, and then lay those out quarter by quarter. So in terms of what those goals are, it sort of depends on the venture, but typically you're looking to address any issues that are coming up in terms of revenue generation, so pure keeping the money flowing in at the top of the organization. So that could be marketing, it could be selling, it could be raising capital, but keeping the money flowing into the organization to support the operations. And then it's looking at the operations to go, well, where are the challenges? Where are the opportunities? Where do we need to strengthen in terms of the workflow? And then we look at the people resources as well to go, where do we need to address and fill in gaps as it relates to skill sets, as it relates to body count as you grow, meaning you might need more hands on deck in order to produce the work or meet the demand. And so we'll lay those action steps out quarter by quarter against different areas within the business. So as an example, when I started my very first business, I was maybe 3 years into doing that. And I realized every day was urgent priorities. There's always urgent things to do. You know, a customer calls, they have an opportunity. So you respond to that opportunity because you got to keep that revenue flowing in at the top of the funnel. But at the same time, there's priorities around building a stronger business over time, creating more stability for the organization. And so by laying out things that you want to accomplish on a quarter by quarter basis, you find ways to make that happen, especially if you put some accountability in place, which is what the RISE program offers at Edge. Anything to add here, Mark?
Nope, good.
Okay, good. Then you track that activity on a weekly or monthly basis. This is just one example of how it could be done. Sometimes putting in how you allocate your time or whether you actually worked on any one of those priorities, whatever those priorities are for your business. And then setting up some kind of a accountability model. So that could be it could be a partner in your business. It could be another entrepreneur who you set up an accountability group with. It could be that you hire yourself a coach, or you join a group program, or it could be just come in and work in the co-working space at Edge in order to have that accountability. Like when I'm in at Edge, I'm working on X within my business. So there's certainly lots of opportunities to surround yourself with people who are working a similar way to you, meaning, yes, dealing with the urgent priorities, but also working on your daily, weekly priorities in order to achieve your overall goals quarter by quarter. And then if you have a partner or partners in your business, to set up regular meetings where you're looking at some of those activities and your progress against those activities over time. So if you're in a program within Edge, then you're getting some of that accountability within within the programs that you're in.
And if you're working by yourself, this is a good time to have a coach or a group. Sometimes there's entrepreneur groups or a networking group or somebody who can. The accountability piece is important. Lisa referred on the last slide about the urgent things. Well, the urgent will always have a tendency to crowd out the important. And you could find that all of a sudden it's December and all those things that you wanted to do since January, you still haven't got to. So if you have them written down, get it out of your head, and then have a list of timeframes and prime people who are going to be tackling each issue and the regularity of recording it and saying it out loud and having somebody or somebody's to help you with accountability makes all the difference in the world.
So we're showing you on these slides different models and ways of laying out your priorities, but the reality is however you do it, you need to make sure they're written down, that they have time frames, and that you have some way of holding yourself accountable through both your tools and systems. Like these are just Excel spreadsheets, so nothing fancy, doesn't have to be an expensive tool, could be Google Sheets, doesn't have to be Excel. But whether you're looking at this format, bear with me a second, this format or this format, these are just different versions of the same kind of thing, right? And these are just Excel sheets that we've used with different clients. So to Mary's point, thank you for commenting, Mary. I was wondering why I would need to approach the business planning, I assume you mean, with a strategy, but seeing it laid out like this makes me understand that it will help to minimize mistakes. So when you go back up to that sort of the strategic plan, with a strategic plan, you're looking to, and we try to lay it out. We do this with our clients within Business Leaders Growth Group. Mark and I work both at EDGE and outside of EDGE together. So what we do with our clients is lay out that plan so that you can see the strengths you're building on and the weaknesses you're trying to fill in and address for your organization. But you can also see the big vision and then your goals sort of quarter by quarter, month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year, and sort of 2, 3, 4 years out. So yeah, to your point, Mary, thank you for making that comment. And we get a thumbs up from a DT. So the next part is to track key metrics. So you can identify some of those for yourself, and it might depend on the business you're in. But I can tell you that in most of the clients that I work with, and certainly in my own business, these are the metrics that we use. We call them the 5 profit drivers to a business. And what we're looking at is the top 3 are revenue producing. So we're looking at how many leads we bring in on a monthly or quarterly basis. And we have targets in mind based on revenue goals. So if we know we want to produce, if we're in startup mode, if we know we want to do 150 or 200,000 in sales this year, then we know how many, we need to calculate out how many leads we would need based on our ability to close. So you're not going to close 100%. So if you need, let's say, 100 clients in order to make $200,000, you're probably going to need at least double that, because you'll probably win 50% or less of what you go out and pitch. I mean, I typically tell my clients, when you're thinking about your targets, you want to be thinking about using sort of a rule of thumb that's sort of across all sectors that salespeople tend to use, which is 100, 10, 3, 1. So 100 leads to 10 opportunities, leads meaning 100 people that you're either talking to or connecting with in some way, to 10 sales opportunities, to 3 proposals, to 1 sale. So your ratio might be better than that, but that is pretty average across all sectors. So on the lead side of things, you're looking to make sure you have enough business that you're working on in order to hit your sales target. So on the sales side of things, that would be sales conversation. On the marketing side of things, you need to make sure that you've got enough coming in the top of the funnel in order to produce enough for the sales process. Are you all with me? Awesome. So then the second profit driver relates to the first one, which is your conversion rate. So it's really what I talked about just now, the 110-3-1. The conversion rate refers to, out of all those leads, how many of them are you closing? And if you can get a handle on what your conversion rate is, and you're not going to know until you start having sales conversations. So it's something that you're kind of measuring backwards. It's a lagging indicator, okay? But you'll, over time, if you track it, over time, you'll get to know what your conversion rate is. You have to track it on a week by week, month by month basis. You'll get to know what that conversion rate is, whether you're more marketing driven or sales driven. And then you can predict more accurately what your revenue will be from the sales activity that you're doing. Are you with me so far? Everybody give me a nod who has their camera on. If you're not, then feel free to ask. Mark's giving me a thumbs up. Okay. Thanks, Hannah, for the nod. Okay, good. So then the third one that we recommend you track is your revenue per customer. So some customers are going to buy more, some are going to buy less. What you're looking to do is over time be able to predict your revenue so that you can accurately set sales targets for your organization. And so if you track your revenue per customer, as in 1 year or in each order, doesn't matter how you track it, but let's say per order. So if you track it per order, then you would calculate out on a monthly basis, what is your average revenue per customer per order? Okay. So why are you doing that? Anybody have thoughts? Feel free to type in the chat or just unmute and tell me. Sanjana, why are we tracking that? I don't want to put anyone else on the spot. Sorry, we're pals.
Why are we tracking? Could you repeat the first part, please?
Why are we tracking leads, conversion rate, revenue per customer?
It's just good analysis, so that in the future you're learning from your past mistakes or your past experiences, so you know that a certain type of customers convert more easily. Maybe some leads generated from a particular source are better. That's good lessons learned.
That's one reason for sure. To understand which customers are important, or okay, yeah, that could be one reason. You track so you can understand what's required to meet growth goals. Absolutely. You also track because revenue is the lifeblood of a business, right? Nothing happens until someone sells something. And I highly recommend you all go read that book that's up on the screen there. So then the fourth profit driver that we recommend you track is your gross margin, which is a fairly obvious one, meaning you want to make sure that after you have paid for the cost of anything that you're selling, that you're still making good margin. And then out of that margin has to come your operating cost, your fixed cost, your own personal income, some retained earnings, and some profit. So so that you can sustain your long-term growth. So you want to be tracking your gross margin and your fixed cost. Fixed cost meaning what does it cost to pay the rent, to pay your salaries, to pay for your SaaS software, et cetera, et cetera. Are you with me so far? Aditi, yes, to understand which orders your business is relying on. So 50% of revenue comes from one order, you're spread out too thin. Good point. I actually recently started working with a client, and they had one client that represented 80% of their business. Can you imagine?
It happens a lot.
Right. And here's the sad part of the story. I started working with them. I kept telling them in every meeting, we have got to address that. And they're like, yeah, we'll get to that. But don't worry, we have a good relationship with them. Want to know what happened? About a year and a half in, that client pulled, and there was no contract, there was nothing, and they lost they lost a huge chunk of their business, had to scale down. So yeah, this is about stability. It's about being able to predict growth. It's about laying a solid foundation. And yes, part of that is how much does one customer represent in your business, for sure.
You want to take the stress out of your life, and you want to try to eliminate all possibilities of future stress in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you measure as many things as you can. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Mm-hmm. I like it. So remember, nothing happens until somebody sells something. So lots of entrepreneurs that we work with, and a lot of our clients, well, let's talk about our clients outside of Edge first. Mark and I work with well-established businesses outside of Edge, privately held companies, entrepreneurial companies that have been in business for, most of them 10 plus years, some of them 20 or 30 years in business, sometimes second generation companies, but still fairly entrepreneurial. And as we work with people, it is interesting to me how often people get 10 years into their business or more and still don't love their numbers. So if you can develop a love for the numbers, you will build a solid business, a stable business. So some of us, when we look at a whole sheet full of numbers here, have a little bit of stress come up. Some of us love it. Some of us, our eyes glaze over. And I confess that I've been there at different times over my career, where I, over time, have developed a better love of the actual financial side of the business. But it is really important that you get pretty close to the numbers and really understand what they're telling you. And this isn't a session on understanding your financial statement, but I strongly advise that you look at at your financials on a regular basis, because it can tell you a lot about where you can and should make investments in the business, where you're overspending. And it is all about long-term sustainability of your organization. It also tells you where you can invest more in making an impact in your community. So if you think about the triple bottom line, some of that is, some of your ability to manage and balance that is because you're monitoring the financials tightly enough. Mark, anything you want to add?
No, you're great.
Okay, sorry, I just want to look at the chat real quick. Identify trends. Sorry, I think somebody was. Oh, here. Start knowing your numbers. Loved it. Love it. Oh, here's a cool story. We actually have a venture within Rise right now who just was invited to go and pitch for Dragon's Den. So that's kind of cool.
For Dragon's Den, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And she's really become one with her numbers. And that was the thing that I had a client last year who had 12 people working for them. I started with them halfway through the year, and I asked them, how much, 6 months of the year, I asked them how much money have you made so far this year, and they're like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know. 12, they had no sense of it. It wasn't in their head. I guess they just had some money in their account, and so they didn't really worry about the fact that they didn't have a number about how much was coming in, going out, or what their clients look like ahead of time, or what their sales cycle is like, anything like that. It's different now. We had a full-on prime exchange reviews, and they're on the mend, but it's just it is people spend literally, as long as there's money in the bank, I must be doing okay, and that isn't, I find flaw in that logic on the regular.
And I'll just point out that sometimes when we're at the early stage, we feel like we're really close to the numbers because money's tight, right? And so we're so close to it, we know whether we can write a check or not write a check, send an e-transfer or not, whether you can afford to make that investment or not. But if that is all you're looking at, then you don't really have a handle on your numbers. So you do, from a pure, is there cash in the bank question or not? But this is the time to start to understand the money flow, meaning what does it mean on your financial statements when it says gross margin? What does it mean on your financial statements when we talk about fixed costs? What does your balance sheet tell you? So it's understanding it at this level means you've built yourself a foundation so that when you're, doing $1 million a year in revenue or 10 million or beyond that you're ready. Aditi, true, at the start, very little is happening, so numbers are not capable of predicting trends. True, but you can see how money is flowing much easier because it's flowing slower. This is the time to use the time to understand the money flow. Okay, so why do we do this planning? So while we're doing this planning process, we need to be in action. And so we need to be reviewing on a weekly basis. Are you getting the traction toward the goal for that week, for that month, for that quarter? On a monthly basis, am I seeing the results? Meaning, is the work I'm doing producing what I need in terms of revenue, in terms of meeting targets, in terms of driving enough leads into my business to ensure growth? And then finally, on the quarterly basis, how did we do? So looking backwards, and then how can I make even more progress next quarter? How can I do better? How can I grow more? How can I grow faster? I'm realizing being here, Mary, what did you say? Sorry, I'm realizing by being here that even just getting in the practice of doing these exercises make you better prepared on the startup journey. Absolutely, for sure.
100%.
For sure. It also is interesting if you start to project out what you could or what you could be doing and start to run your numbers as if you're doing that, like experiment with the numbers, run scenarios. You get a good idea of what's possible and where you could have some, let's call them black holes, in terms of losing money as you grow. So what I mean by that, and I'm sort of talking in circles, is if you could run a, let's call it a cash flow projection, meaning if the goal is to do, let's say, $500,000 in revenue this year, if you start to work backwards on that and build a mental plan around it and fill in like as if you're getting the revenue and run it month by month, like revenue growth at X% in order to hit that target, then you can see what your expenses would be in producing that revenue. And you can, if you start to project out, well, okay, but maybe I can't do that. So what if I only did 300,000? How does that impact? It also can show you where your need for investment is, whether you need to go raise some financing, whether you need to go find a grant, but you need to do that upfront financial analysis to figure out what you actually need and when that need will hit.
Right. And even from a cash flow perspective, are there different times of year? If you're in a cash business, you're getting paid like at the till every single day. That's great. But if you invoice people, sometimes they pay in 30 days, some pay 60 days, 90 days, depending on your industry. It could be a whole bunch of different lengths of time. And you could get into a crunch. If you pay your staff every 2 weeks, maybe you have a 3 paycheck month. All of a sudden, that's going to impact. So by planning everything out, realizing when your different revenues are going to come in the front door, when all revenues are going to go out the back door, and figure out, it's like, okay, then you can tell ahead of time, like, the end of July, end of July, which is the first of the month, and a lot of bills come through the first of the month. That's going to be a really sticky point. So we're going to have to start building a strategy to make sure that we get to the end of July and we're in a really great place and we're not, stressed out, which and it makes a massive amount of difference.
Any questions at this point before I move forward?
I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of social. I sort of have two parts to the question. A lot of social ventures are service based, and they're expecting their revenue not to come from product sales, and or the services that they're selling are really replacing what might have been a government service, and they're looking for their funding to come from grants. How does this model work? Like a revenue model, do you consider that a nonprofit versus an entrepreneurial venture?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, grants can be one source of funding. You could also go for donations. You could go for funding, like government funding you could go for government grants, or you could go for private foundation grants. It's really like, it's very comparable to a sales process. Meaning you have a target, you know what different grants are worth, you won't win 100% of them. So you're going to need to sort of project out how many of them you think you can get, what an average size of that grant is, whether it's a private foundation, whether it's a government grant, or whether you're going for private, building up your base of donors. But it's really a sales process. It's, put all those contacts in a list and start calling and figuring out what different grants are worth, almost as if you're making a sale.
Okay, thank you.
And your close ratio, you'll track over time. You'll start to learn what it is over time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's fine. I guess my question, what it was answered, is that you see the funding model you use, no matter what it is, whether it's sales, it's product, it's a service, if it's that you can use the same thought process in terms of marketing, sales, and just focusing on like the environment or the world that you're living in. Okay.
I'm stressing sales a lot because I find a lot of times young ventures don't want to do the sales work that it takes to get something off the ground. Like they want the grants, but they are maybe nervous to make the sales calls, or they're depending over much on lead generation through marketing. And sometimes just a few phone calls would actually generate far more sales. So that's why I keep stressing it. But no, if you're a not-for-profit, it's the same process. Really.
Okay, thank you.
And just to stress back to the keeping track and measuring, oftentimes you get a grant, you probably won't get it all at the same time. Sometimes there's a payment schedule even for the grant. They'll give you 50% up front, maybe 25% through the thing, and then 25% goes with the final report, right? Which still means you have overhead and staff, and you might not get that last 25% until a couple 3 months after the program is over, if you're running a program. And so how what kind of financing do we have to keep in place to make sure that we can keep all the lights on before that final payment comes through?
Okay, thank you.
And you can start to predict. I'm just going to talk sales or fundraising, same thing, okay? And Andrea, I keep wanting to call you Andrea because I'm working with
that's
someone
my
right
name.
now. Oh, is it? Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Andrea, then that's been a long trip. So, whether it's sales or whether it's fundraising, have a target in mind, track as you have conversations or as you have applications, track the opportunity, the amount that you're going for that opportunity, and then give it a percentage of probability. so that you kind of have, you know, if you multiply the number by the probability, you'll get probably where you'll land in terms of revenue. So it's sort of a traditional pipeline. Have you seen something like this, Andrea?
I worked 30 years in corporate Canada.
Okay. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
I
then.
understand the model.
Same,
The
same
challenge
model
is,
then.
yeah,
Mhm.
the challenge is sort of the social world, the social venture world is a little bit different. And so
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what I'm finding is, and I think what you've told me makes sense. It's even though people go into, I find are people I'm working with go into ventures because they have a vision and they want to do good, unless you have the stability and sustainability, which requires a focus on sales or fundraising or revenue
Revenue.
generation. So it's just, that's a hard switch for people to make, which is probably exactly why you're doing this presentation.
Yeah, exactly why, for sure.
Okay.
And
Thank-
I mean, there's a discomfort with that some, right? Even
Yeah.
though we have the vision and we have the passion, there's a fear of picking up the phone and just talking to the person who's managing that grant, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just that extra push to do it. The other thing is, whether it's fundraising or selling, setting yourself a goal, you know, by X date, we're going to raise $10,000.
Mhm.
And we're going to do that through developing our own donor base or developing our own customer base. Same thing. You set that target and you figure out, well, what am I approaching people for? So as an example, I'm running a fundraiser next Monday night with a couple of other people in my community, and we decided we were going to raise $10,000 to send 100 kids to camp. We have negotiated relationships with day camps in the area. And so we set that target. We decided to approach people to donate either 300 or 500, and we started making phone calls. And we are almost there.
Excellent.
So, and we decided 3 weeks ago. So it is entirely possible, right? But it takes a bit of guts. I mean, I've been doing sales for years, and it still took some guts to call people and ask, right? Yeah. So Ashley, will these templates be available? I'm happy to make them available. Sanjana, would it be okay to? Yeah, so I'm happy to give you some of the tools that we're talking about and the ones you've seen on the screen. In particular, I'll send you a cash flow template and a sales pipeline. I think those two are really important. And then I'll send you a planning template as well.
Yeah. Fadi had his hand up there.
Please.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. Amazing. I'm pre-revenue. I come from the corporate world and trying to do social enterprise, selling towels, premium social and environmental impact conscious towels. But I'm just trying to figure out, I have a bachelor degree in math. I love numbers, but now with the, building this spaceship, trying to get it off the ground, so many parts that where do you see it's still pre-revenue, and I love my number. I want to put the budgeting in and then see how it comes. I guess the accounting software will tell me the actuals, right? But where do you see myself hiring a financial person? Because I may need to do PR, I may need to do marketing, all those different hats. Where do you feel that I will need another person to do that?
So, Mark, did you want to take that? Sorry, I have a
just for clarity, like to find somebody to look at your numbers or like to validate them.
Yeah, almost like to the point. First year, I probably will be able to do this myself.
Yeah.
But at what revenue level, I guess, yearly revenue that you see that I need to, or are there some almost services where a financial person will come in and look at numbers? Hey, you're doing this. And I was a buyer at Harry Rosen for 17 years,
Okay.
I know procurement, many things, but financial, I was also doing the planning. for spending $20 million for, buying all those beautiful men's accessories. But I wasn't doing the financial part. I was
Okay,
also,
so
like
yeah.
open to buy, I was kind of doing, but
So can I?
mhm.
Yeah, sorry. I'll just in the interest of time, I'll jump in. I would suggest that until you get to revenue, that you manage your numbers yourself. You can use like Wave accounting. It's free until you start to collect money through the system. So that you start to understand the money flow yourself. You probably understand to a point, but you need to see it a little differently than the reports you would have seen at Harry Rosen, because you need to understand how the profit is made, and then what's left over is what's taxed. You need to get a sense of it. But soon after that, and that's up to you when you do it, but I would suggest you start with a bookkeeper who then enters the information for you in the system, and then annually have an accountant doing a review. How soon you do that is up to you. There are tools you can use to do your own taxes until you get to the point of hiring an accountant. An accountant will cost you about between $600 and $1,000 a year, probably, for a pretty simple business. Okay. So, if you have a good bookkeeper entering the data and it's all very accurate and appropriately assigned, you could just use a software tool.
And the bookkeeper costs approximately, sorry to interrupt.
They run between 25 and 45 an hour.
Okay.
So, and when you're just starting, you'll only need an hour or two. You can enter some of the stuff yourself. It's just good to have some extra eyes on it to make sure that you're entering stuff right, because if you enter it wrong and you go a year, 2, 3 years down the road, then you've got a big mess.
For the sake of time, is it okay if I reach out via
Sure.
LinkedIn and ask a few
Sure.
questions?
Amazing. Of course, absolutely.
You guys are angels. Thank you.
You can also drop into the Ed space at any time. They've got a number of resources and people on the team. There's some mentors available as part of the Edge community. So certainly feel free to reach out there as well. So if you were to start to follow the process we're talking about and hold yourself accountable, or work with someone to hold yourself accountable, this time next year could look quite different. The book, I don't know if you've seen it, but Jim Collins in Good to Great, he talks about how getting into action is really the secret. Like, a lot of people spend a lot of time on the vision, but you got to be in action. You've got to align around the vision, but you've got to be in action in order to move your venture forward. And so you really do need to be in action, but as you grow, have everybody working against a plan. And that plan, the simpler it is, the better. And that's why we teach using these fairly simple, straightforward quarterly planning tools, and then assigning tasks and action items. I want to share a little story. I have a son who, for many years, I would take to Value Village, and I would say to him, he's now 10, so his early years, he's a little bit more sophisticated now, but I used to take him to Value Village, and I would say to him, you can have anything in the store. And he would be so excited. He'd be running around the store. He can have anything he wants. And so one time we're at the store, and we found a remote controlled car still in its package. And he was so excited, literally bouncing up and down, 6 years old. Comes home, we unwrap it, put the batteries in, and he starts trying to use it. And I said, I can help you, honey. And he's like, no, I want to do it myself. And he's jamming all of the controls on the remote control. And of course, the car is going crazy and bumping into everything, and he has no control over the car. So finally, he just throws it over to me. And within seconds, of course, I've got it under control, and I'm shooting the car around as well as I can, being mom. So the point of that story is, sometimes we get all excited when we're starting a venture. We want to do everything at once. But the reality is there's just a few key steps, and it's small things. Everything in business are like levers on the remote control. It's just small incremental adjustments that we're making all the time. And that's why we encourage you to set plans, build a manageable amount of activity and be in action against those activities, and then track the results and adjust accordingly. Small incremental changes, small incremental steps move organizations forward. And as you move forward, as you grow, you're building steady growth, strong growth, stable growth, which lays the foundation for you to have greater and greater impact over time. So small levers, small steps. I think we all know that we have this sense of ourselves that sometimes we feel like a small fish playing in a big pond, and you're handling the daily challenges, but kind of feels like you're not making much progress. But if you start working in your business and you work against those profit drivers for your business, those metrics that we talked about, over time you'll build your vision, and it'll happen much faster than you ever thought. So it's a little bit about getting in action, but getting in action on small key steps that make a difference for your business. And I'll just open it up at this point, and let you ask any other questions you have, or Mark, you have perhaps some thoughts as well.
No, I think the incremental change thing is great, and it, I mean, entrepreneurialism has blown up in the last 5 to 10 years, which is amazing, and it really is, I believe, the way that we're going to change a lot of worlds. But at the same time, there's rarely a case where somebody's going to be like on the front door, and you open it up and it's success, and they say, we've got everything ready for you, come on this way, we've got it all laid out. It's a lot, and oftentimes, I've had a dozen companies, oftentimes in the beginning it's just me, right? And you kind of, that there's a top of the mountain, but we really got to break it down into the journey of 1,000 miles starts with just one step, and then another step, and then another step, and finally you're making your way through a process and realizing some change, realizing some success, and really applying yourself to your end goal. But that we always get, I think, lulled a little bit into, the person on the front page of the magazine who started up their company last year and sold it for $10 billion, 18 months later. I mean, it does happen, but it's fairy tale. Most of the people that, Lisa and I deal with, and we're in contact with dozens and dozens of companies, are people who are making a fair living, working, determined, hard, and incrementally, just constantly, the steady state is great. Oh, I just rhymed there inadvertently.
And next thing you know, you're looking back and you're trying to figure out how to leave your business for your kids.
Yeah.
And it really just starts with a few small steps. You working alone, step by step by step. Slowly.
Dream big, start small. Exactly.
Now it's on you, because if you're like many of us, myself included, you attend a workshop or a webinar, you get some great ideas, and you walk away with a few tools, but then life takes over, and you forget, or you don't put into action what you learned. So we're going to send you all these tools that we talked about. We're going to send you a copy of this presentation. But it's really on you to leverage them and move forward and build your path and grow from here, and put your own accountabilities into place, whether that's joining a program, whether it's participating at Edge, or whether it's finding a peer and asking them to hold you accountable, or developing mutual accountability. It's on you to go and build and take the knowledge that you've learned. Both Mark and I are very willing to be contacted. So here are our personal contacts for you. The company that we're building together. It's called Business Leaders Growth Group. There's a network of us, but what we do is help entrepreneurs grow, but we also work at EDS as well and mentor and coach entrepreneurs who are in early stage as well. So feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to connect to us on LinkedIn, and I'll open it up. Feel free to ask your questions.
And I'll be at the Changemakers Summit tomorrow. If anybody happens to be on campus at Sheridan at the hub, I'll maybe have the good fortune of meeting some of you in person.
Cheers.
All right, Hannah.
Sorry, what did you say tomorrow? I didn't catch that.
There's a Youth Changemakers Summit at the hub in Sheridan tomorrow. Oh, I don't know the exact time because I'm there all day.
Jana, can you help us out?
Yeah, the Youth Changemaker Summit is from 5 to 8 tomorrow. And for those of you who are in this session, if you would like to attend, I can leave. The link is in the chat and you can sign up for the event, and we'll see you there tomorrow.
Awesome. So Mark and I'll hang on if you have a few questions or if you want to.
We've got about 10 minutes left.
Sorry, if I may just quickly, like
Sure.
similar to this youth, futurepreneur, and I've been, trying to get some help here and there, and I said, "Ooh, I'm 10 years, 39, 49. I'm 49. A futurepreneur. I'm more a seniorpreneur now. I realized." Well,
actually, there's so many people your age starting businesses.
I don't care. It's I love, like, I just I put the why in the middle, where I want to do some change, and that really gets me going. So definitely the I was very I didn't see the love from the Toronto. My corporation is in Etobicoke. So I tried to get some information from the Enterprise Toronto. They're short-staffed. There are not too many people, and so I ventured out to NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center in New York, and then in London there's another one. But I realized that there's also in front of my nose there's lots of help as well. So I'm really looking forward to be in touch with you guys as well.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hannah, you've asked, how do you approach media outlets for your business? Did you have to pay to get coverage? And if so, may I ask how much? So media outlets, you're referring to like getting on City TV or getting a story published in the paper? Is that what you're referring to, Hannah? Okay, so it's a long, complicated answer, but the short version is you need a good story. And then you need to have a clear sense of what those people who are journalists, what their area of focus is, so that you're pitching the right person. Meaning you don't call up a business editor and pitch a wellness story, as an example. And the story needs to have some kind of news hook, meaning it has to tie to a current issue. It has to tie to a current news issue, a current social issue that people are talking about, and it's more likely to get covered that way. I wouldn't just pitch it though. I would pick up the phone and call and talk first to the journalist and understand what their need is. Like, what are you writing about these days? What are you covering? Talk to if it's City TV you want to go on, talk to the producer and ask them, what makes a good story for you? And then they'll probably ask you what it is that you have that might be interesting to them, and then you have an opportunity to pitch. So that's the short answer. And I have to correct myself. The YCS event is not open to the public. but you're still welcome since you were here tonight. And since I flubbed it. Marisol's here, she's my boss.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Obviously, people are invited. It's tomorrow, so it's very short notice. If you can make it, you're certainly welcome. And of course, Liz and Mark and whoever they bring with them, they're always welcome. So thank you again for keeping it in mind.
So to the point that Fatih, how do I say your name, Fatih? To the point that you made, there are a lot of programs that seem to be very youth focused. And of course, the Youth Changemaker Summit is more youth oriented. And then we have our own youth program there too. But EDGE itself is supportive of entrepreneurs of all ages. Our focus really is on people that are trying to make an impact with the venture that they're building. So we have a lot of people building nonprofits. We have people building businesses with a social purpose. We have people building social enterprises. But all of us together are working to try to change the world in some way in our own little sphere of influence, whatever we choose that to be. So.
Perfect. I'm planning on basically my social impact will be lots of it. I don't want to bore you with all of it, but with every towel, a towel will go to women's shelters, because
Awesome.
it's not happy wife, happy life. It's happy women, happy society. I realized that once I was stuck with my kids to care for them with COVID. Thanks to COVID, things changed in my life. I feel like Neo in the Matrix, falling from the corporate world into, yeah, it's amazing to see people, trying to in this same resonation, mind frame. I appreciate it. Good thing I joined today.
Some of the most amazing entrepreneurial stories are built out of shambles, right? COVID, loss of a job, financial struggle, whatever it is. And some of the best stories come from that because it's about endurance and perseverance.
Running
so I have no doubt we will hear about your successes in a very short period of time.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
One of my favorite analogies is the Chinese word for crisis is actually made up of two words, and one word is danger and the other word is opportunity. So in any crisis, obviously there's danger, we'll have to deal with that, but what's the opportunity there? The COVID was certainly dangerous for a lot of us, but there's also opportunity there, which you're looking into, which is great.
I just love it. It gave from the corporate world in front of the computer, and now it makes me think about sustainability, social, environmental. My brain, it will keep me fresh and young.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Andrea, what are you starting? What are you building?
I'm working with a nonprofit organization, and we're just looking at ways it's called CREW, Community Resilience to Extreme Weather, and we're looking at how we can scale so that we're not always in a crisis mode. So it's we work with in Toronto, in St. Jamestown, and have done a series of other projects, but the challenge is to scale to a degree that it becomes as I said, sustainable and more predictable, that we can put the oxygen on ourselves first.
So I might challenge you to look beyond just grants to build your own donor base and your own network of private sources of funding. So, developing relationships with some of the people that run private foundations that maybe align with your cause. I know in past fundraising that I've been involved in and done, that has been the better, more stable source of income.
Yeah, I'm sort of the back office part of the organization, the backbone, collective impact. But yes, but I think what the focus that I picked up today is that even the important work is as much talking to people, having those 100 cups of coffee, who in fact is the the macro world of donors and who can do what for you and what kind of timeframes, and having to do that work, even though it's considered unpleasant.
It's not though, it's super fun.
No,
No,
it's harder work. It is, it's not why the group of people who run this organization got into this venture.
True.
It's
Yeah,
not
true.
the skill set that they do have it because they're
Yeah.
selling passion, but it's not what they would prefer to do. But anyway, that is just that was I think a key point I took away is that
Mm-hmm. And
and that's exactly what scaling is. It's just make it more predictable and more foundational in terms of financial stability.
And predictability comes from the volume of conversations you're having and increasing that beyond the target.
Mhm. Yeah.
So hence the pipeline idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else for a last question before we sign off?
I have one quick question. Do you recommend putting a KPI in that's not finance related, that is like amount of people's clients served, something that focuses back to your mission?
No question about it.
Okay.
Absolutely. And yeah, and there can be, you know, everybody goes to financial KPIs, but once you get on the social venture side of things, there's all kinds of things affected, number of volunteers, you know, contributions, non-monetary contributions, certainly. You know, if you're looking at like say food donations, like, you know, how do we measure how well we're doing, which has non-monetary impacts on it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Measure.
that's about your ability to serve and grow your impact, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Mm. All right.
Thank you
Well,
very
this was
much.
fun.
Santana, this
Thank you
has
so
been
much,
great.
Lisa.
So fun. When can we do it again?
Soon, I hope.
Okay, good.
This was an amazing session when I got to learn a lot. And for our SIC folks, we just have a few reminders that we wanted to go through. YCS is tomorrow. So if you want to bring a +1 to YCS and you're an SIC participant, please reach out to us via email. The RBC survey link, end of term survey link, is in the Google Classroom. So please fill that out. We have a special Edge co-working trial for you. And you can learn more about it by emailing us at our Edge email address. We now have a Google page, so please go there and leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. And the end of term reflection is also live on Google Classroom. So that is your last deliverable for this entire program. And it was lovely having you guys here. And this is the best way to end the program with this amazing session. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. All the best.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Mark. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
I know.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm running to my next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, we
Santana.
go.
Thank you,
We'll talk to you
Marisol.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.
We should stop the recording, Sanjana.